Hi, I'm 48 male, and I think I'm an a-hole for taking my ex-daughter-in-law to court. I know how bad this sounds, but I swear it will make sense. I got married when I was 18. I tied the knot pretty quickly, and I was okay with it. Also, by then, my wife was expecting a child, so it seemed like the next possible step. While becoming a father was not on my plan for another 6 years, I was ready to step up to the responsibility, and so I did. I worked day and night and did my best to provide for my family. I was lucky to have a supportive wife and family because I was able to finish my education and get a better paying job to make sure my child was having a decent life. Honestly, my son is my everything. His mother, my lovely wife, passed away when he was just 8 in a drunk driving accident. It ripped me apart to lose the love of my life, but having my son there for me really pushed me forward. Even in my darkest moments, all I could think of was my son. I knew that he deserved so much better. I did my best to be there for him, be his both mom and dad, because I knew what I had to do for my son. I did not even consider dating until he was 14 because I wanted to be there for him. And by then, honestly, my desire to date had disappeared. I found better things to keep me busy. One of those hobbies was woodworking, and I met Tom there. Tom was your average guy. He was about 9 years younger than me, and we enjoyed working together in our woodworking classes. When we were discussing the housing market and how I was hoping to buy a house for me and my son, Tom suggested the house next to his. I was interested, and on checking out, I loved the house. It was a quaint little house next to his, and it was quite cozy. I showed it to my son, and he liked it as well. While that did mean that he would have to travel via bus to his school, he was not too upset about moving. We moved into that house when my son was 12. When I lived next to Tom, I noticed a few things about my neighbor. He is an alcoholic. He is abusive. More often than not, I would hear him screaming at his elderly mother. I felt bad for the woman, and whenever I was working with him, I would try to bring up the topic as gently as possible. But he was not willing to listen to anything I had to say. It was not a good thing to realize that the friend I have had for the past 4 years is an alcoholic man who abuses his mother. I don't know if he had hit his mother, but I knew he was verbally abusive. Owing to our friendship, my son was often around Tom, and somewhere I noticed that as a young boy, my son was definitely idolizing Tom. I did not want that to happen, so I lowered my contact with Tom, and once I did that, Tom did not reach out to me either. So overall, our friendship died down easily, even though we lived near one another. Now, when my son was 18, he decided that he wanted to join the army, and before he left for the boot camp, he married his girlfriend, who he had been dating for about 4 years by then. I kind of did not want them to be married because I knew the difficulties of marrying this young, but at the same time, my son insisted that he would be able to keep everything afloat. He was going to boot camp and then he would go for deployment, but that did not stop him from wanting to provide for daughter-in-law, and I did not want to argue with him about this. So eventually, it was me and my daughter-in-law living in the house. As I was busy with my work, more often than not, daughter-in-law would be home alone. I didn't want to make her uncomfortable by being too friendly with her because I knew the poor girl was uncomfortable not having her husband around after marriage. While I was not around, daughter-in-law got very friendly with Tom. I did not know about their friendship until one day I saw daughter-in-law doing the walk of shame from Tom's house. On confronting her, she told me that what she does with her life is none of my business because she's happy with Tom. My son is a loser who left her to serve his country, and Tom gives her what she needs. Hearing those things definitely upset me. I informed my son about this, and after a few argumentative calls, daughter-in-law decided that she will not live with me anymore and she will file for separation. The separation was filed and she left the house. I would be lying if I did not feel fatherly affection towards her, so As a father figure, I told her that I knew Tom, and I know that he is an alcoholic with abusive tendencies and she should really not be with him. Daughter-in-law told me to mind my effing business and let her do her own thing. In the heat of the moment, I told her that she will regret it and that when she comes back, I will not help her. She said that she will never be back and that if she ever comes back, I can sue her. She promised to never bother me again. I believed her. My son was very broken and angry because every time he came back, he would see his ex pressing around in the house next door. That led to him not coming home that often. If he was not deployed, he would be out traveling with his buddies. Over the past 9 years, I have seen things get worse in Tom's house. Tom's mother passed away mid-COVID, and after that, I know for a fact that my ex-daughter-in-law is the one who is getting screamed at. I know that it is not my business, so I just kept my mouth shut. Now, 9 years later, 2 days ago, my ex-daughter-in-law dropped by my house. She was upset with me for not warning her enough about Tom. She stormed into my house after Tom had thrown her out in a drunken rage, and the first thing she said was that this was my fault. If I had brought up my son better, he would have known to be a family instead of serving his country, and she would not be stuck getting abused. I tried to calm her down and told her that this is not my responsibility to tell her what she should be doing, and not because when I did tell her, she refused to listen to me. When I said that, my ex-daughter-in-law decided that the best thing to do would be to tell me to F off and kick the shelf I keep in my living room, as I let her in, and break it. Understandably, I called the police on her. They caught her fleeing the area, and when asked, I pressed charges on her. When the news reached her parents, they did not hesitate to call me an a-hole. I told my son about it, and he too called me an a-hole for doing this. So now I'm wondering if I am an a-hole. Update 1. My son and I had a long conversation, and he apologized for calling me an a-hole. He said that even though he did think I was an a-hole at that moment, now that he has had time to think about it, he has come to the conclusion that I am not an a-hole, because all I did was do what I should have done. If it had been anyone else in her position, I would have done the same, as that would have been the most logical step to take. However, he also knows about the promise that she made to me that when she comes back to me, I will be free to take her to court, so he assumed I had done it because of that. After our discussion, my son and I have decided that once this is over, I can move somewhere else where I do not have to be around daughter-in-law and Tom. Son also suggested I get security cameras around my house once he heard about Tom giving me death glare since daughter-in-law went into custody. I will install them ASAP. I do not know why, but I have a gut feeling that Tom might do something dumb. Update 2. Tom did something dumb. Ever since my ex-daughter-in-law has been in police custody, Tom has had the free rein to drink. Based on the court hearing I had with daughter-in-law, I learned that she got thrown out of the house for trying to stop him from drinking. Anyway, since she is not around, Tom got extremely drunk and decided to break my windows with rocks and break into my shed. He smashed my lawnmower into bits and pieces and tried to break into my house when I called the police. He too is now in custody. As far as the trial with my daughter-in-law went, I explained to the judge that she committed adultery with my son, and since then we parted ways, even though I did warn her. She did not listen to anything I had to say and decided to be with Tom, who is a raging alcoholic. I also explained to the judge that I did take her to my house when she came knocking on my door because I wanted to keep her safe. But then she started fighting with me and broke a shelf before running away, which led to me calling the police. So that is how that one went. Judge ruled in my favor, and I am hopeful that I will be okay when it comes to my case with Tom as well. Update 3. The case with Tom went through. I won this one again because of the security cameras my son suggested I place around the house. He had to pay me a fine and is now forced to get rehabilitated. With the money I got from daughter-in-law and Tom, I decided to fix up the house and put it up for sale because I do want to move out of the house. My son is supportive of the idea, and as I have settled down in my new house, I managed the time to update you guys regarding everything. I never thought I would end up in this type of situation, but it is what it is. I am glad that my son dodged her, though. I did not want him to lead a miserable life. Hey, OP, NTA, I think you did the right thing. If I was trying to help someone and they damaged my stuff after blaming me for their mistakes, I would have done the same thing. I think you should speak with your son about this in detail so that he really understands everything. NTA, you did what is expected of you, and I do not understand why you are being called TA. Next story. My wife has two sons with her ex-husband, 13 and 17. I have two daughters with my ex-wife, 10 and 12, and together we have an almost 2-year-old son together. All our kids get along well, and we have a good relationship with each other's children. My parents are very doting grandparents to my three bio kids, but have always been standoffish with my stepsons. There have been lots of little things over the years that have shown how little they care for them. They have never once bought them a birthday present. My wife's parents get my daughters gifts, and at Christmas they are always given the most pathetic, cheap gift. It's not always bad, as there has been times when my dad in particular has been good at engaging with them. In November, he came with me and the boys to watch a football game and go out for lunch, and everybody had a great time. Last week, my mom stayed with us as it was my daughter's 10th birthday. She stayed in the 17-year-old's room and he slept on an air mattress in his brother's room. Not only did she never think to thank him, but she also tried banning him from going in the room at all when he occasionally needed to. One morning, he knocked on the door to ask if he could go in to grab his sneakers, and she said no and wouldn't even pass them to him. I had to intervene and get them myself. Despite this, he was nothing but polite to her face. If I listed every passive-aggressive thing she said, did to the boys during her stay, it would make this post too long. On Friday, the 13-year-old and toddler were playing outside with a basketball. At one point, 13-year-old threw the ball a little too hard at his brother and knocked him over. My mom had been outside and saw what happened and started to berate the 13-year-old and grab him hard by the arm. When his mom came outside to see why the baby was crying, my mom continued to say foul things about my stepson and called him an awful brother and dangerous to her grandson. When stepson told his mom what he had accidentally done, my mom started raving about him doing it on purpose. When I got home, my stepson was sulking in his room. My wife had told me what had happened, so I went to see him and we talked. He vented about how my mom had made him feel the whole week and asked me why she hated him and his brother. This made me angry, and after talking with my wife, I decided to ask my mom to leave and told her she wouldn't be welcome back until she corrected her attitude towards my stepsons. Of course, she didn't take this well, and after she argued with me for over an hour, she left. Later, I got a call from my dad, who was livid. He wouldn't let me explain myself, so I hung up. I feel I did the right thing to protect my stepsons, but my siblings are also upset with me. They think I'm an ass for treating our mom badly and overreacting. Even my wife thinks we shouldn't have kicked her out, but instead talked to her and given her a chance to change her behavior. AITA? 100% NTA. Well done on defending all the children in your home. I am happy that your stepsons have a great step-parent in their corner. As for your mother, please make sure that she is banned from your house until she apologizes for her awful behavior. NTA, because you finally took action to stop her behavior. But you're trending on the a-hole side based on this continuing for years without response. If you back down, you will be an a-hole because this is purely bullshit behavior you've overlooked far too long. Your bar for your dad being a good companion on an outing is such an underwhelming standard. You knew your mom was highness and an a-hole while, I guess, in your son's room before she laid a finger on your other son or maligned his character and integrity. You need to reckon with the damage here. The kids witness so much favoritism and ostracizing from your family. They know good and well how little love your family has for them. Next story. My 21 male sister, Layla, has owned her horse since she was 7 years old. A little over 3 years ago, my sister had an accident in sport which landed her in a coma. Layla's horse is boarded about a 4-hour drive from where I, and most of my family, live. My older brother, Jacob, 29, and his mom live less than an hour away from the stable. The horse is fully trained and Layla used to compete with him. The arrangement has always been that most of the horse's expenses would be paid for by Jacob's mom. Our dad isn't in the picture for any of us, as well as my mom and stepdad. After Layla's accident, Jacob started contributing financially to the horse's needs and even started riding him. Last week, my parents asked me if we could have a talk. When I got to my parents' house, my best friend and Layla's long-term boyfriend, Thomas, 21, was also there and didn't know why he was called over either. My parents pretty bluntly told the both of us that they were going to sell Layla's horse because it's unlikely that she'll ever wake up again and it's not reasonable to keep putting money into the animal. I asked if they'd spoken to Jacob or his mom about this, since they're the horse's primary caretakers, and put a fair amount of money in as well. My parents said that they hadn't spoken to Jacob or his mom, and they shouldn't have to because it's Layla's horse and they're her parents. Thomas disagreed with this and offered to contribute financially to the horse as well as driving up to take care of him. If and when Layla does wake up, she's going to want to know her horse is okay. I agreed with Thomas and put out the same offer. My parents told the both of us that we're not thinking clearly and it's better for everyone if the horse is just sold. This decision didn't sit right with me, so I called Jacob and asked what he thought about the matter. Jacob wants to keep the horse, and so does his mother, and his mom has said that she will fully pay for the horse's expenses by herself if it comes to it. My parents told Jacob that he just needs to get over it because it's not his choice, and hung up on him. Once the call had ended, my parents said that I was completely wrong for calling Jacob for his opinion, and that they're disappointed in both Thomas and I for even considering keeping the horse. Both my parents are upset now. They won't answer my calls and have also seemed to cut contact with Thomas, who was like a son to them. AITA for going against my parents on wanting to sell my sister's horse and asking my brother his opinion on it. Edit more info. Replying to questions in the comments. The horse has nothing to do with Layla's accident. She was athletic and involved in multiple sports at the time. As far as I know, my parents are completely fine with money, though it is possible that they're just not telling me. I'm not 100% sure as to who has the legal rights to the horse because we've always called him Layla's and never really talked further about it, but I assume he belongs to my parents. Thomas and I are both in ongoing therapy. Therapy was suggested to my mom a lot back when the accident first happened, but I don't think she ever went, and my stepdad refuses to go. Both myself and Thomas still regularly go see Layla and spend hours, if not the full day, with her. The main reason for keeping so much hope is that occasionally there'll be the slightest movements, yet obviously non-responsive, or her heart rate will slightly pick up. My parents don't go see her very often anymore, but they still ask both of us about how she is. I don't know if it's relevant, but Layla and I are twins, and she had been dating Thomas since she was 13 and he was 14, which explains the extra attachment. Other people do interact with the horse. He's properly groomed, and those of Layla's friends who also boarded their horse there, as well as sometimes the owners of the stable, will pet him and take him out into the paddock when they bring their own horses out and bring him in again. Layla has been in the coma for 3 years. The horse is currently 17. The last time we got an offer on him was while Layla was dismounting after a competition. Back then, those offers were almost $44,000. Layla was the one to refuse that offer directly. That was about 6 months before the accident. We're fraternal twins, thus me being male and her being female. NTA, Can you, Thomas, Jacob, and his mom pool money and buy the horse for Jacob and his mom? You are already putting money into the horse's care or willing to do so. Stay tuned for more stories from our girl relationships.